Hey guys, it's Angelo, and welcome to my Shadow Priest rotation guide for the pre-patch to World of Warcraft Shadowlands. With Shadowlands delayed, and the pre-patch being with us for an extended period of time, this is the perfect time for you to learn the ins and the outs of this new Shadow Priest, and in what better way than with a step-by-step guide of this new rotation we will be playing. A lot of things have changed for the Shadow Priest, and if you haven't stayed up to date on all of my Shadowlands alpha and beta videos in the past, of course there's a lot you're missing, but this guide should set you on the right path to get ready for World of Warcraft's upcoming expansion. Now in this video, we'll be covering everything you'll need to know, so how to deal the most damage in a single target, straightforward situation, how to maximize your damage depending on the amount of enemies in combat with you, and how to use your cooldowns and your talents the most effectively. Now, if you would like to join the discussion with anything World of Warcraft related, then be sure to join our Discord server with the link of course in the description box below. Apart from that, I'm sure that you are all very excited to start off in the pre-patch, so without any further ado, let's go right ahead and have a look. Okay, so as stated before, your rotation will revolve around a builder and spender playstyle. We will build up insanity with our core builders naturally by applying Shadowward Pain and Vampiric Touch to our target or our targets, and then just using Mind Blast on cooldown while we fill with Mind Flay and Mind Sear respectively. Once we're at the 50 insanity threshold required to use Devouring Plague, we will then spend this insanity on Devouring Plague and essentially repeat the cycle. Of course, this is just the complete basics. That in and of itself is the core and the basic concept of the rotation we'll be playing. Build insanity with everything in our core rotation, and then spend it on Devouring Plague once available, or of course Searing Nightmare. Whereas the basic construct of this rotation is fairly easy, it has incredible amounts of elevation it can go through, making it not only more fun, but also more challenging to manage depending on the amount of targets you are up against, the talents you are using, your stats, and other factors, which makes the spec play incredibly engaging in, well, literally any situation, even in single target. The challenge ultimately lies in managing your builders in order not to overcap on insanity, spending your insanity accordingly before you overcap or waste insanity, and maintaining your dots on all targets in front of you. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, we need to take a step back and summarize what has changed for you as a Shadow Priest this pre-patch. Void Form in its old iteration is completely gone and is now a cooldown. The Shadow Priest has reverted back to the way it was before Void Form was ever a thing, with the focus lying on dot management, tied together neatly with a builder and spender playstyle, where we build up insanity, our resource, with spells like Shadowward Pain, Mind Blast, Vampiric Touch, Mind Flay, or even Void Bolt when available, and spend that insanity on either Devouring Plague, our new big spender, or Searing Nightmare, which is a talent, and our AoE spender essentially. Apart from that, various talents are now gone, namely Shadowy Insight, Shadowward Void, Dark Void, Shadowward Death, Lingering Insanity, Legacy of the Void, and Dark Ascension. Yes, those are quite a lot of talents which are now gone, and of course they're replaced with other options, and more on that in just a bit. Other talents like Fortress of the Mind, Shadow Crash, Void Torrent, and Surrender to Madness have either seen soft or hard redesigns, depending on how strongly they intertwined with our old playstyle, which is now no more, of course. I'll go over the details of all the talents in the Shadow Priest guide for this patch, which will come out soon, as that is not the focus of this video. Apart from that, we also have some new spells this pre-patch, with Shadowward Death and Devouring Plague returning and being important spells for our rotation. Okay, so far so good. That's all you need to know when it comes to the rotational spell changes really, so let's now actually go ahead and take a look at your rotation directly. In a typical single target situation, your rotation is actually quite simple and would look something like this. Engage the fight by applying your dots, so Shadowward Pain and Vampiric Touch, then use Mind Blast, and use Mind Flay until Mind Blast is ready again. Use Mind Blast, then cast Mind Flay again if you have to, and once Devouring Plague is ready to be used, immediately cast it onto the enemy. Refresh your dots and rinse and repeat the process. When entering the fight with Void Form ready, you will apply your dots, then cast Mind Blast, cast Void Form, which will reset your Mind Blast cooldown, cast Void Bolt, and either followed by a Devouring Plague should you have enough Insanity, or by another Mind Blast should you not have the Insanity yet, and then the Devouring Plague afterwards. The rotation will then fall into similar patterns as it did before the pre-patch, essentially still feeling like a two-step dance while in Void form by keeping Void Bolt on cooldown, filling with Mind Blast, and spending Devouring Plagues whenever available. The more targets you have to deal with, the more complex your rotation will become, but in single target situations, the single highest priority will always be to achieving enough Insanity to cast Devouring Plague. In multi-target situations, you'll essentially be following the same basic rules, but your rotation becomes a set of priorities you need to follow, and the better you do them, the more damage you will deal. You'll be applying your dots onto targets, building Insanity, and then spending it on either Devouring Plague or by spamming Searing Nightmare, which is usable at 30 Insanity. If you're not playing with Searing Nightmare, which you will most likely only be using for very big packs during the pre-patch, you will just apply your dots with Misery and spend your Insanity on Devouring Plague. Your spell priorities should be on screen now, because again, our rotation is honestly just a spell priority list at this point, and it's our job to keep track and manage this list as effectively as possible. Now let's take a look at your talents and how they can change your rotation. The Shadow Priest has an incredible variety when it comes to talents and can potentially mix and match a lot of combinations together depending on how they will be balanced and how strong they will end up being. Unfurling Darkness will be used to apply an instant cast Vampiric Touch to a target every 15 seconds. Death and Madness will be used to snipe some extra 40 Insanity from a target right before it dies, while Searing Nightmare specifically will be used when you have too many mobs in front of you to handle with Misery and for a longer period of time. Currently, due to the performance of Searing Nightmare, this will only happen with very big trash packs, but you can't really manage your global cooldowns anymore with Misery on the enemies, and dot management becomes too much to do. The point at which this happens goes very far apart. Some very good priests say Searing Nightmare can already be used at 3 targets, while others say you won't be using it until 10 targets. Now, the safest frame of reference for you is actually 5 targets, which is where you will not have enough global cooldowns available anymore to keep your dots running on all targets effectively, and can therefore safely switch to Searing Nightmare. Keep in mind that if Searing Nightmare gets buffed, then it can be used a lot earlier, but currently it's just too weak to do so. Damnation will be held on cooldown and can also be used when you'd have to move, while Mindbender and Void Torrent will also be used on cooldown and preferably in Void form. Surrender to Madness will be used as a perfectly timed spell, or rather as perfectly timed as you possibly can, in order to ensure that an enemy dies while STM is active, which will grant you a free Void form. All in all, our talents are incredibly diverse this patch, and it will be very interesting to see what players will be able to do with our kit during the pre-patch. Especially since things like Azerite traits will still be around during this time, the gameplay should honestly be quite a bit of fun and pretty engaging. Gameplay-wise, the Shadow Priest is certainly a brand new spec, but feels very well tied together and just has an amazing toolkit at this point, which lets you deal with any situation that could be encountered. It'll be interesting to see if the developers decide to buff or nerf certain things during the pre-patch, because the Shadow Priest definitely needs some spell adjustments currently. Searing Nightmare feels too weak, while Unfurling Darkness feels a bit too strong. Mind Blast could also be hitting a bit harder in my opinion, while Mind Flay hits too hard actually, which is also a bit concerning, especially because of certain interactions with Mind Flay in Shadowlands, specifically with legendaries and conduits. Dark Thoughts also suffers from the weak Mind Blasts, but this may not be as noticeable during the pre-patch. I do have to give credit to the Ignite mechanic with Devouring Plague, which definitely buffed the ability in a positive way. Let me know what you think. Have you played the new Shadow Priest at this point? Do you like it? Well, why or why not? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And should anything change concerning our rotation, which is certainly a possibility, I'll be sure to let you know. Thank you so much for watching, and if this video was helpful to you, be sure to give it a like, and if you'd like to stay updated on the content of this channel, then feel free to subscribe. A very special thanks to my supporters over at Patreon, you guys help out a lot. Now, as always, have a good one my friends, enjoy the Shadowlands Pre-Patch, and I will see you all in the next one.